Greetings, everyone.
The first trailer for Star Trek Discovery Season 3 debuts. Doctor Strange will be in Spider-Man 3, and will we ever go back to theaters like we did before? Today, on Midnight's Edge in the morning.
Greetings, everyone, and good morning to those of you in the US, and good evening and good afternoon to those of you everywhere else. In either event, thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. And joining me for that is Tom.
Good morning.
And making his debut on Midnight's Edge in the morning, our own narrator supreme, Rob. Yeah, exactly. And also, we are joined by a very special guest, filmmaker Tom Konkle. Welcome back to Midnight's Edge.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Oh, fantastic.
Sounds like we need to wake up here first, right?
First, I want to say something, okay? Screw Acer computers. You know what? You made this freaking thing impossible to upgrade. I spent the good part of the morning trying to put a new video card in this thing, and there's capacitors in the way. There's cables that are in the way that you can't work around. I had to resort to some unorthodox methods to get the freaking thing to fit. So up yours, Acer. I know you bought Gateway, and whatever it was whatever you paid for it, it was too much. So that's it. You know what? You're done. You're on my list. Like,
you've already turned this into Midnight's Edge After Dark already, Rob.
I just had to vent my anger before I could fully concentrate and turn my rage towards Star Trek. Okay.
It's understandable anger. It is. I've tried to do some upgrades myself.
I'm trying to put a video card in this thing, and they actually have a capacitor that's in the way, so you cannot fully seat it. I'm like, what the hell? That's like if Ford welded the radiator to the body of the Mustang. You know, same thing. No different.
The only thing worse would be a Mac where they void the warranty if you open it up.
Which that's standard practice for them, isn't it?
I know. So you can't win.
Tom, meet Rob.
We actually did meet, didn't we?
We did meet
on another show.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. Where you told me where I reminded you about the Joe McHale Rose Bowl story.
I forgot.
That's right. We met.
Or I probably tuned out because Rob was just going on and on. No, but good morning, Rob. Good morning, Tom. Good morning, Andre, or afternoon where you're at, actually.
Yeah, afternoon, actually, or evening even. But yeah, anyway, now that Rob has shared his feelings on Acer Computer, who can tell are not sponsoring this channel.
At least not for the foreseeable future.
Then never will now.
They never will now, that's for certain.
Oh, I'm sure my feelings towards Acer could be turned around very quickly, with a brand new gaming PC. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Say no more.
Well, we probably won't find out. But in either event, there will be more sharing of feelings today because we have several topics of discussion for you. First and foremost, the Star Trek Discovery Season 3, which is due next week, dropped. And then there were some other Star Trek news that no one cares about, so maybe we'll get to them later. There's something strange is happening with Spider-Man that we'll briefly be discussing as well. And then we will be discussing a little bit in the state of the industry, and will moviegoing ever be the same again? And if not, what kind of movies will drive entertainment in the future? So that's what we have on the topics for today, and we welcome everyone to join in with the discussion in the chats. We try to look at it as much as possible. So greetings everyone there. Good morning, Eric Majana. Oh, Neil is in the chat. Hey Neil, how's it going? Darth Merlin and Robert, Armored Otter is here, Cat Sith is here, and many, many others. Dave Dahl, you sound like someone that's at least origin in my part of the world. Stephen Murphy says greetings from Ireland. Hey, Ireland, welcome, welcome. Andre, hey, my name brother, Andre Enrico is here. And Morbid Fury says good morning, Midnight Sedge. I just want to do a special shout out to Morbid Fury's icon. That right there is a black box. That's what they actually look like. They're not that black in reality. They're meant to be seen, so you can find them in the wreckage. And it's also the cover for one of the best albums ever released, Reise Reise by Rammstein. I love that album myself, so just have to give that shout out before moving on.
And thank you, Mr. Tickle Trunk. Thank you for the shout out there.
We just lost Rob. But yes, Mr. Tickle Trunk sent us a Canadian $2. Says the great Konkle has returned today. Today is a good day.
Konkling the room again.
Yes, and here comes Rob.
See, they got me. They found me and they got me. That's the no. I just closed the wrong tab.
Are you sure I didn't fire you?
You fire me every stream. I've been fired more times than George Jetson. Jetson!
Fired! You're unfired. I need you. Come here.
There you go.
And Tonister Tree sent us $5 saying, liking the format, guys. Well, thank you so much. We do try, and we're going to try to keep this a regular thing. And Adam Wofford also sent us $2 saying, yay, the boss of Midnight Edge is here. Now you better be referring to me. And yeah, I'll be here for the daily live shows, because the beauty is that we call this the morning show, but to me it's actually the afternoon/evening show, which is one I actually have a chance to be in, because it's not in the middle of my night, which is what most of the other shows are, time zones being what they are. But with that said, let's get into the first of several main topics today, namely the Star Trek Discovery Season 3 trailer. Rob, why don't you carry on sharing your feelings?
Help us, Mikey Spock. You're our only hope.
Well, it is John Lennon's birthday, so I guess help is appropriate.
Well, won't you please help me to put an end to Discovery?
This is the only show that I know of where the actual premise itself is the thing that's continually rebooted in a show. It's so strange to me that rather than progress with stories or character, it literally hits the reset button on the fundamental premises of the show, as if it's still searching for what it's about. In this case, did anyone notice how much like Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda the show will now be for this season?
Oh, it has been. And well, basically we're stuck in this point again where now in the third season we're at where this show should have started in the first place, where it really couldn't have messed with anything in the timeline, and it would have been so much more interesting. But at this point I really don't care. Watching those first few minutes, all I saw was a bunch of pew-pews. Not Idris Elba got hit by Mikey Spock. And I didn't care. It was just a lot of noise.
Yeah, there wasn't character moments. It was sort of, hey, look at our new premise moments, and I'm thinking, well, this is, a ship moves forward that's part of this federation, and now they're going to restore order to a dystopian future. And I'm thinking, well, yes, that's the premise of Andromeda. And then you again have these sort of unlikable characters that scream at each other, and they've given her, a love interest and this sort of thing, but it's unrecognizable again as Star Trek. And it's in the future, but now it's in a situation where it can't even travel for discovery. You know, it's now set in this one place and they've crashed, and it just feels like they are retconning and trying to figure out, how do we make this show a show that someone might like? And so let's try this. And the problem is there doesn't feel like any sort of plan or guiding hand. Now it's just, hey, let's try this storyline, see what happens. But the fundamentals of the story are just broken, and the characters haven't become beloved characters, and we're 3 seasons in.
Yeah, and the funny thing about the love interest thing, it's almost like Cartman wrote this. It's like it had to be a black guy.
I need a black guy for the black love story. You know, just it's so like shallow and simplistic, you know. Oh God, you're right. They keep throwing shit against the wall to see what sticks, but they're just ripping off better stuff in the meantime. And I don't
absolutely that's the problem.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with the pitch Robert Meyer Burnett put together for Star Trek in the mid 2000s, I think it was, according to him. If I have the information wrong, please correct me. Called Star Trek Federation, where it's 900 years in the future, and the Federation is in shambles. It's grown complacent. It's grown fat. It's grown, it's become a redundancy upon itself, if that's such a term. And it just this is the Black Eyed Peas of Star Trek series. They just take better ideas and somehow they weave it into something worse. I don't know.
Gumbarrel's right. It's one-dimensionally. It's one-dimensional, even though they've went into multi-dimensions already. It is. It's just it's not Star Trek, folks. And I felt that in that first 3 minutes we saw, because that's really what we can call it, a trailer in quotations, but what it was the pre-credit sequence. And it was dumb. It was boring. I really don't give a crap anymore. I don't care about these characters. You know, I said the same thing when they posted the whole thing about the non-binary character and the trans character. It's like, I don't give a shit about the characters you got on the show now, so I really don't give a crap about what's between the legs of the new characters either. So
you know what? There is actually one character I'm vaguely interested in. The cat. I like cats.
That's just because you like cats and dogs, and we all do. But let me tell you something, Andre. Here's a secret. There's a shit ton of cat videos on YouTube.
I know.
that's Alex. You know what? That's Alex Kurtzman. What animal's popular on the internet? Cats, Alex. Okay, let's.
It just proves that all he ever watched was Star Trek: The Animated Series.
Yeah. So he's just so it's really a Cation, but he just shrank. What if we do the Cations, but not really the Cations?
He didn't know it was called a Cation.
Yeah, the cat guys. He probably called it whatever. It's just oh God.
Yeah.
God.
Anyway, my feelings on all of that aside, because you are of course all right, especially Konkle. You have a very, very good point in that what they're basically doing is rebooting the premise for each and every single season, which goes to show that, in accordance to what we've reported before, each and every single season has been a production nightmare, and none of them have clicked with fans. And so they basically, at this point, they've thrown everything at the wall to see what sticks, and now they're throwing this at the wall to see what sticks. That's what it's looked like to me. And I don't even remember what was in the trailer. I really, really don't. Like, the only thing that I remember after seeing it a couple of hours ago was that, or seeing it for the second time a couple of hours ago, was that I thought it was way too expensive, way too much money had been spent on it. It looked like overtly CGI'd in like, oh, look at us, we're spending so much money. Like, overdone, really overdone.
Looked like episode 3 opening.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
it looked like Star Wars. It looked like Star Wars Episode 3. It looked like George Lucas spending loads of money on CGI effects that weren't quite ready, or when the technology wasn't quite there yet. And visually, it looked like a mix of Star Wars and JJ's Star Trek, which also was
Yeah.
inspired by Star Wars. What it did not look like or feel like in the slightest was Star Trek. And the only thing I have to
True.
say about the character was when we basically see Burnham, then it's filmed in a way where we're like supposed to care. But as you say, like, I don't care one thing. And maybe Sonequa Martin Green is a decent actor if given the right material or anything. But with what she's had to work with here, she just hasn't got the opportunity to shine. And that's especially true here, because here basically we are given this dramatic thing where she's supposed to be stressed. I just don't buy into it in a second.
Burn
And
him.
I'm dreading
Yeah.
seeing this.
Burn
And we'll
him.
be
I'm
also
with you, Andre.
yeah.
I'm with you. As I said before, shit on Velvet is still shit.
Yeah.
And they've wrapped this with a very expensive patina of production value and effects. Hopefully they throw in a really alien character, like a straight white male, that might creep into this universe and be very alien.
Creep people out.
And the problem with it at its fundamental is if you can change the premise this much, it means that you didn't have any meat or structure that this was hanging on. Sure, you can push in new directions and take a show in some radical new ways, but as we just said, simply putting it in a blender and going, well, that didn't work, but let's take the same characters and do this, and let's do this to it, means that there was never a very strong premise to hang this on, because it's too malleable. And it copies a lot of things less well than its source material. And that's the problem with modern Star Trek. I noticed there was even a conscious decision to say, no, the Federation was this amazing thing, and we must bring it back, and we must do it, almost as if it's acknowledging, yes, you're right, we crapped all over the idea of the Federation, but now, no, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Now take a look at this. Now we're bringing the values of the Federation back to this poor society, but we're going to stay on this planet for a while. And again, the problem with Discovery is it's borrowing a premise that Roddenberry had originally come up with, but it's lost the point. Yeah. And as much production value as you put into something, if you don't care about the characters, you're not going to be emotionally involved in the show. And no amount of smoke and mirrors is going to convince someone that they need to care about the character.
Yeah, like Andre said, burn him. More like blew him up. Shooter 1991, I hope you're still here. Sends in $10. Hey, Tom, I have to go, but what was your favorite part of filming Noise in the Middle? And also, are you excited about the horror film you're getting ready to direct called The Phantom?
Oh, my goodness. Thank you for that question. Well, Noise in the Middle is the horror film that I have coming out on the 29th. My favorite part would probably be just exploring. I have a memory of I play a character named Albert in it. He basically runs a psychic bookstore. He's sort of the idea is if the dude from if the dude from Big Lebowski had a psychic eye bookstore, it would have been my character in my mind anyway. One of my favorite memories was they flew me up to Spokane for a location. And I worked out, I saw the layout of the store I would be in. So in my hotel room at about 3 a.m, I laid the entire hotel room out in the shape and design of the store I'd be doing my scenes in. And my fondest memory is just like a psychopath running through the scene and moving things around in the middle of the night to get the character down. And then it allowed me to be more flexible and improv and come up with some funnier little grace notes in character, but I absolutely loved doing all the scenes in the psychic eye type bookstore for that film, and I am excited about directing hopefully The Phantom. So keep looking for that, and thank you for asking.
Since we're on that, what can you tell us about The Phantom, if anything? Because I'm instantly intrigued by the title, because I just happen to Love the Phantom by Lee Falk. Now, of course, I realized that this probably has nothing to do with that, but since I'm actually...
Well, this is an old school 80s style slasher film. And it is really a project that I've been working with this guy named Ethan. And we're hoping to get back to the practical way of doing effects. I'm a huge fan of John Carpenter's The Thing and Tom Savini and that style. So I really want to sort of marry that with the intrigue of a Silence of the Lambs style film. So it's something when the world comes back from the current problems, I hope to be able to explore the roller coaster that used to be 80s horror films.
That sounds awesome. I can't wait to hear more about that project, which
absolutely
will be look forward to covering. Oh, good morning, Script Doctor, who's in the chat.
Yes.
And Christian Garcia says the same thing. Wait, it's not the superhero, the Phantom, and no, that would be something else.
Andre disappointment, yes, but to my I love 80s horrors. Andre will tell you I've been steeped in the Friday the 13th box set all last 2 days when I've had time.
Absolutely.
Of course, I did take a detour with the Bat people this morning. That was kind of different, but anyway, while I was waiting for the show to start. But yeah, this whole Star Trek business, like, I'm the casual fan of the channel, right? And I have not had any desire to continue to watch this since like the second episode, guys. Like, even then I was done and out. I've tried to find bits and pieces to like. I can't. I've desperately tried, and the few things that they've allowed me to like throughout the show, they've gone and destroyed. Tilly being one thing, and then Saru being another. Lorca was okay for a little bit, and then that went downhill. The Mirror Universe, what's her face, Michelle Yeoh's character is fucking insane, and not in a good way. Like, we got Klingon rape and baby heads in this show. I can't, it's not Star Trek. It's not. I don't give a fuck how much they want to try and lie to me. It's not. I'm done.
But Tom, don't you know if it says Star Trek, that means it is Star Trek. They get to say whatever Star Trek. They get to say whatever they want Star Trek is.
No. Christian Corelio, is that how you say that? Probably $5. If
Christian Corellejo, I would guess, but
maybe. Yeah, well, you say it much better than I do anyway. Either way, get that crap off the screen. If you've seen it, what's your guys' thoughts on Lower Decks season finale? It's apparently been renewed for a second season. Probably because it's cheap to produce.
Here's the thing, though.
Watched the last 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Andre, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I have not yet seen the finale. We'll try to see it for tomorrow, and then we'll have a live stream reviewing the season finale.
In other words,
sometime tomorrow. That's the plan for that. As for that, what did you think, Rob? Share your feelings.
I don't want to go into too much detail, but it ranged from disappointment to just boredom, or as the French would say, ennui. So, I mean, it's probably the perfect summation to Lower Decks that you could have. It was a series that was going nowhere, and sure enough, it went nowhere, and just relied on member berries the whole way through. It was just one. I mean, and they pulled out. Oh, Tom, they pulled out some big member berries for this one.
Yeah, well, I'm sure.
Remember, Tom? All I got to say, Tom, is Star Trek Las Vegas. Remember at the panel?
Mm-hmm.
Your question?
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, I've heard a few things.
Yeah, well, we'll get into that. We'll get into that later on. And Rama sent us 40. Something.
3 something.
3.
Looks like alien.
Rupees or something like that.
Those are galactic.
It's alien. Yeah.
Those are Galactic Republic credits.
Anyway, season 3, I'm still getting over Vulcan logic extremist. Oh, I'm sure you'll get much worse things to get over. But
Let's move on to the next topic.
Yeah, let's move on.
I don't know.
We also
we
had
got
a question from William Jones, who asked, Andre, I still can't buy a super chat because of Google nonsense. Will you make a video sometime in the future about showrunners and entertainers making stuff we don't like?
Isn't that pretty much what you do all the time?
Don't we do that?
I had that show with you.
I mean, I guess you got to be more specific.
Yeah, you have to be more specific, and then we'll deal with it. But in the meantime, to conclude the Star Trek the chat for right now, because we will get back into that plenty. Because tomorrow we're aiming for a Lower Decks show, and then of course every Thursday from here on out, there's going to be the Star Trek Discovery live show after it airs. So yeah, I look forward to that. But right now, something strange is happening with Spider-Man. More specifically, Doctor Strange will be in Spider-Man. Any quick thoughts on that? Tom?
Well, did you want to tell everybody about our video that never happened yet? That I kind of stopped midway through, and I'm like, did you want me to tell everybody?
Well, no, it's because very often we begin videos that never make it through completion, either because we discover an error that means that we cannot proceed, or we are waiting for more information. And we started a video on Spider-Man, current Spider-Man situation, and we thought that we had the information that we needed to make the video, and as it turned out, we didn't.
But what was ironic about that, Andre, was
during that, then Tom made a guess. Tom, you guessed a connection between Spider-Man and Doctor Strange in conjunction with the multiverse concept.
And Sam Raimi.
And right on cue. Yeah, and Sam Raimi. And right on cue, a couple of days later, then this comes out. So, Tom, take the story.
Well, all I was going to say was I woke up, which is strange. I do sleep once in a while. And I was in like that woken, drunken haze. And I was about to come out and start working on the video that we're talking about. And I had this epiphany, like, why the fuck would they get Sam Raimi if anything, just to direct a Doctor Strange movie? That doesn't make no sense. And then there's all this multiverse talk, and I'm like, wait a minute, what if the whole thing is connected with Doctor Strange, Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire? Something's here. Something's going on. And I stopped the video and I said, well, what's going on here? And you said the same thing. And all of a sudden this news dropped. So I was like, I had nothing to go on. I had nobody told me anything about it. So like, this is just purely me just guessing something was going to come out of this for some reason. It just didn't seem right. But Mr. Tinkle Truck, this is for William Jones, he says. There you go. Thank you so much. But like, it makes sense. It totally makes sense. Now, granted, I'm not so sure we're going to see Andrew Garfield, because I think he kind of burnt his bridges in that respect. But the chances of seeing Tobey Maguire,
different regime. The people that
I know it's a different regime, but Amy Pascal's still around.
He didn't burn his bridges with her.
Okay,
it wasn't. He burned his bridges with Cassie Rai, not with Amy Pascal.
I think Tom might be right, but I also, just as a screenwriter or somebody that makes films, I think there's also another factor or possibility in that the new Spider-Man, as a narrative, as a character, is really built on the idea that Peter is always fighting against an older authority figure or mentor. And so with, Tony Stark gone, I probably would have gone to the same place. One of the closest in origin style characters was Doctor Strange, who had a rich sort of narcissistic man who finds himself and gets outside of himself as far as a character and becomes more altruistic. Well, he seems like he would step into that mentor position that Peter as a character needs, because he's supposed to be the youngest Avenger and he hasn't quite found himself. So narratively, it makes a tremendous amount of sense to have him something easy to push against, which is a mentor that he both has an antagonistic, but also learns about himself by having an older superhero mentor. Totally makes sense. And if you look at the bench right now for Marvel, the logical choice would be someone like Doctor Strange, who is very intelligent and sardonic, like Tony is. So that makes sense. But you're right. It's also interesting that Raimi had an original connection with Spider-Man, and how interesting to loop things back out and get very meta, that if he's somehow involved in dovetailing into the Doctor Strange movie that he's doing, the idea that he has also shaped the earlier incarnation of Spider-Man and how that might cross over, it makes organic sense. It's actually a very good leap. I can see you making that connection, but I also see we are being reintroduced. It's been has it been 22 months, 24 months since anything Marvel has been in the theater? I think it's been at least that long. So they may also be doing a slight reintroduction of a lot of characters in a convenient way by putting them in one movie and having them interact, because this really is a reset, a new phase. There's been a period of sort of nothing after Endgame. So it makes sense narratively. It makes sense as a business thing. And it is interesting that Raimi now has become a creative force in more than perhaps one place.
Absolutely, that's very interesting, and it will be cool to see what will happen with it. Rob, do you have any thoughts on that before we move on?
I just want a good Spider-Man movie. Just give me a good Spider-Man movie. Forget all this multiverse stuff. Forget all this. I don't mind Doctor Strange being sort of like a fatherly figure to Peter Parker, because God knows a kid that age needs a father figure, no matter how much some people like to say they don't. But just give me a good Spider-Man movie. Forget Morbius. Okay, listen, I got the perfect movie here. It writes itself. Peter's a student at Empire State University. There's a bunch of co-eds turning up dead. Michael Morbius is there doing experiments. Bang, the movie writes itself. Go with it. Okay, you can thank me later.
That being said, though, I like that point about like a father figure, and like Tony Stark in many ways was his father figure, and now he died again, which of course he has experienced. Peter Parker has experienced not once but twice before. Once with his real father that he may not even remember, then with Uncle Ben, who he definitely remembers, which would have made Tony Stark all the more important. So for movie terms, Tony Stark was his father, and now he has to deal with a new father figure, which is something that many that has gone through divorce and their parents finding another partner will have to deal with. You can actually do a lot with that. That actually made me more excited for the movie right there. I just hope that they treat it right. But speaking of treating right, X Morbius, this is brilliant. X Morbius sent us $2 saying, "Forget Morbius. I've been looking forward to it."
Yeah, but you're biased.
Your name.
It seems like
you're a little biased there, but yes.
Yeah. What about you?
Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I agree, Andre, to put a positive spin on this. This is about an important thing in a journey of a man. And if we're going to make a movie about something, Peter is looking for a way to model his behavior. If you had to define the new Spider-Man character, he is a boy transitioning into becoming his own man. They've certainly explored that in the other films. There's absolutely nothing wrong with saying that it's important for a male character to have another male older character who is both a mentor but challenges them. And if you're going to make popular entertainment and want to feather in a real point, I think as men, we should discuss this idea that, as you say, it's important to have father figures. It's important to have mentors that you can look to and respect. He shouldn't be a 24-year-old who knows how to do everything. He shouldn't be a 24-year-old who is smarter than the adults. He is a very smart character, but he doesn't have sometimes the street smarts and sometimes the wisdom of life. I think there's nothing wrong with a character who has repeatedly tried to learn the lessons of life. He's lost an important mentor, father figure, deals with that, and then we've created a mythology in this that here's another character stepping in who is a difficult, maybe it used to be a distant man who is now going to have to consider the Peter Parker character. And all of us as men have had mentors or men that we look to model our behavior. It's the aspirational thing. When I was growing up, you want to be Clint Eastwood or Harrison Ford, or you want to find someone that you can latch on to. So I think, it's not a bad move to make a movie that's entertaining and a great, as Rob was saying, a great Spider-Man movie. But if we're going to explore why he is who he is, then why not write something where it's about the importance of male interaction and having an older character that's your mentor?
I could not agree more. That is also why I unabashedly love the movie Bumblebee. And I don't think there's ever been a movie that has blown me away more than Bumblebee. Because it looks stupid, it didn't do well at the box office, but that's because people didn't see it. They were burned by the previous movies. But that movie, at its core, is about a young girl who is dealing with the loss of her father, and she's hurting and suffering because of it. And that is the cornerstone of the movie, and it's a great movie because of it. I mean, the original is cool too, but that was just a boy buying a car. I mean, screw that. Like, Bumblebee actually matters. But
you're right.
Yeah, let's move on to the next thing, because here's the thing with Spider-Man. It's a very big, very expensive movie, and it's got even more expensive now that it has Doctor Strange in it. Likewise, future DC movies, it's going to bring in all the Batman into one movie. That's going to be plenty expensive. You're going to want loads of people to come to see that in cinemas, or in theaters and cinemas, and likewise with Dune, that got pushed back now till October. Also a very expensive movie that loads of people are going to have to go to see in theaters in order for it to have a chance of being profitable. But will people go and see these things in the future? Like 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years, 3 years, whenever this current situation is over, will we ever go back to seeing movies the way that we once did? And where does that leave all of these huge movies that are being announced right now? Filmmaker Tom Konkle, what thoughts do you have on that?
You raise a very good point. For those of us that love big genre films, the media by which we have seen them has always been important as to what scale you can tell your story. Let's face it, the canvas is dictated by the fact that you can say, if I make this $150 million film or this $200 million spectacle, and I really explore a very expensive action effects laden film, you have to have a way of recouping that money, hopefully quickly, which used to be going to the theater. And I want to very quickly say that I think we're social animals. I think that a movie is funnier when you watch it with other people, especially if someone has infectious laughter. You tend to not laugh by yourself watching something. You might chuckle or something, but you certainly express yourself more in a movie that way. In an adventure, it's a shared feeling of energy in the room, or when someone's crying. You had a different reaction to Spock dying watching Star Trek if you were in the theater than anyone else. We are social animals, and I think there is something about movies that's magical because you feel the space, you feel the larger than life quality literally when you go to the theater. I wouldn't have been a filmmaker without some of my fondest memories, which was seeing a movie in the theater, which to that end, we're in the middle of a permanent transition. I don't think that things will go back to the way they were. I think 5 years from now, a movie theater will not be the typical way most people see new releases, as evidenced by, I don't know if you know, but the new Pixar film, Soul, they've decided is now going to be released on streaming. It won't get a theatrical, which is unheard of for a Pixar film, a film that ostensibly would have opened very big and would have been a communal experience watching. It's not going to. It's going to be purchased through a streaming service at home. And I think one of the very big things we need to discuss is the technical gap. I would love to go through each idea with you, but the technical gap between watching a movie at home and a theater has narrowed over the past few decades. We all have fairly good HD TVs, surround sound, and I think that will ramp up. So I believe that the problem that we have is that there won't be the parking and the food and the finding a babysitter and the other kids making sounds in the theater. And people, unfortunately, will become used to the lack of a communal aspect. And let's face it, if the theaters stay closed as long as they have, there may not be theaters to open a big movie in the future, except maybe a Marvel or maybe a huge event film. IMAX perhaps can keep in business. But I'd love to know your thoughts at first about the technical gap in the medium, but also the idea that consumers go with the lazier option, that they will stay home, but by its nature, that means that budgets may shrink or the scope. We may make very expensive television episodes and call them movies.
Do you want me to go first, Andre, or did we want to let Rob? Did you want to go first before you leave?
Yeah,
or?
yeah. I gotta jump in. Well, first of all, what Tom says about the technical gap is absolutely true. I mean, you have parts of New York
I think
City.
we lost Andre.
Oh boy. Well, anyway, you have parts of New York City which still aren't wired for broadband. I mean, and it like I said, and I have two choices for a long time. I had piss poor internet in my area, and it's not a rural area. I mean, you have a lot of the country that is lagging behind much of the world in terms of internet speeds. I mean, when Latvia has better internet than I do, that's a problem. And I'm not being hyperbolic. Was it Riga, Latvia is the capital, I believe. It has better internet than much of the United States. I just shake my head. How is that possible? And there's always talk about transitioning to digital for movies and video games and stuff like that. The United States isn't there yet. And for the people who say, well, there's more countries than the United States, but still, this is where the most money is.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a major, major upgrade to the network. I mean, just in terms of business and in dollars and cents, I read somewhere it would cost somewhere around $5 billion to upgrade the entire country to fiber optic cable. Now, back in the old days, the government would do that. They would contract it out, but now there's no will to do that. Secondly, this whole thing about the lack of a communal experience, you know what? As George Carlin used to say, don't bother my ass none, because the movie-going experience has deteriorated over the last 15, 20 years to the point where unless it's a big release, I just won't go. I used to go to movies every week when I was a teenager in the 80s. Regardless of what was playing, every week I'd be at the cinema. Now it's a big event gets me to leave the house, and the food. It's not just the expense. It's the food. It's the parking, and the fact that people are doing things in theaters that, even though it is a communal experience, they still think they're in their living room. There was a guy behind me when I went to go see. What was it? I went to go see the first Spider-Man movie, a whole bunch of people, they would not shut up through the whole movie. Here I am. I waited my entire life for a Spider-Man movie. He's yelling, "Dark man, dark!" I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's going to turn around and scream, "Thank you, anonymous stranger." I wouldn't have thought of that. I'm like, this is
I think you're right. But I think that's because of the technical gap between watching at home and the theater. People don't know how to act in the theater. And for hundreds of years, you went to the opera, you went to see theater, and then you went to the movie theater, and you were in a public place. People used to wear suits to go see something. And now you're right. They act like they're in their living room because the main way people consume stories and content is in their living room. So naturally, when they go somewhere and they watch it, they act like they're in their living room.
Yeah, and like I said, and one of the other things too is, like I said, I really have a problem with people bringing small children into the theater with them. Now, I understand people, there's certain movies, there's family movies that you want to go see, and that comes with the territory. You go see the latest Disney movie, you go see a Pixar movie. That's perfectly acceptable. However, there were people bringing small children into the theater in strollers to see Casino Royale.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Oh, you had the same thing. I remember with just recently with Joker. There was people.
I don't know how that is even allowed.
And they do.
Yeah, they do it. They do it.
I remember going to see Freddy versus Jason at a midnight fucking showing, and these people brought a bunch of their kids. We're not talking teenage kids. We're talking like toddlers up through probably 4 or 5 years old.
Yes.
Like, what the fuck are you doing bringing kids to a Freddy versus Jason?
In my country, you couldn't even do that.
Yeah, people don't know how to act anymore.
Yeah.
There is no social contract between people. I've glared at people who literally don't discipline their children, and they're in an R-rated movie, and they're just too cheap to get a babysitter. And they have no consideration for the people around. They're the same people that will talk loudly on a cell phone next to you. It goes back to my original point, which is people don't know how to act because they've become too used to watching movies in their living room. You couldn't watch a movie in your living room in the 60s, 70s, or let's face it, any other time in history. And so our social behaviors have not caught up to what technology allows. Yeah. And I would ask this of Andre, do you think more of the watch party style where people, used to watch sporting events, pay-per-view type fights and things, do you think that might become the communal experience where someone would buy, say, a movie on a premium video on demand and then watch with a group of friends that way? Do you think that's possible, that it may replace the communal experience we had in theater?
I don't think it's going to replace it, but I certainly think it's going to increase in importance. I just had an idea. Tom, when your movie is done, let's have a watch party on that.
There you go.
With the director's commentary and everything.
I would love that. I was just exploring with the streaming last night. I was experimenting with the idea of an interactive commentary where you could have a real dialogue and have a watch party and enjoy the movie together. And this would be a way that, say, I could enjoy the movie with you and we're not even in the same city, but we could have the communal experience of watching it. I think that would be fun. I'd love to try that sometime. I think Midnight Edge would be a great place to do it because we have great fans and people that are passionate about cinema. That's exactly who you're making a movie for. So why not bring it directly to them and have a real interactive experience with like-minded people who know how to behave?
Absolutely, because like we've Tom and myself, like that's like Midnight's Edge. Tom and myself, we've done a few midnight watch parties now with the 80s horror and sci-fi documentary group, which have been a blast. That's absolutely something that we can continue doing. Rob, you were saying something. Do you have to leave?
One last thing before I have to jump is that there's a lot of people that I understand if you can't afford a babysitter, okay, fine. Not everybody has the means to pay for a babysitter. However, my parents had 5 kids. Okay, they didn't get out to a movie for years. Okay, yet when you're a parent, you have to make certain sacrifices, and sometimes a night out is one of those sacrifices. I'm sorry, but that's just the reality of it. I know people don't feel like they should have to make that sacrifice now, but you know what? Hey,
Yeah.
that's
That's
just
the
that's the
same
way it
time.
is.
It's polite. It's polite.
cost of
By the way,
moving
thank
now.
you. Thank you, Cynical Lindsay, for that comment. It is polite. You're absolutely right, Rob. The idea that you're not doing this for yourself, you're doing it to be polite to other people. I know that's lost on most now, but you're right. If people just use their head and thought, would I want someone doing this to me? The answer would be very clear as to how to behave in public. I think our whole point goes back to the core is we have technologies, but we have not evolved socially to be able to have a polite society around enjoying entertainment. We don't know how to act, or people are thoughtless and ruin the communal aspect of watching a movie. The idea was that you were watching it with a bunch of strangers and you all bond, but you're supposed to pay attention to what you're doing, what you're watching, not bring your living room with you.
Well, not only that, at the cost of a movie now, I have a hard time buying the excuse that you can't afford a babysitter compared to what it costs to go to see a movie. Like I get it. Sometimes it might be a little bit more expensive, but it can't be that much more expensive.
Right.
And my reaction to this whole thing, and I've been pretty vocal about how I feel like the theaters are important to this whole ecosystem of films, and I think we were proven that with the failure of Mulan, how Bill and Ted played, and how much it was able to make, and basically not make enough to cover some bigger movies. So in the end, I think you're right too, Tom, about the whole fact that you're going to have the theater still for certain things like the Avengers and other things like that kind of movies, to where otherwise that's all they're going to be able to afford to do is lower level movies like Bill and Ted, to where it only costs 20, 30, 40 million dollars to make. And also speaking of commentaries, I mean, that's the thing is like, yeah, I'm sick and tired of the high cost of popcorn and the bullshit in the theaters and all that kind of stuff. But I also know a lot of that's a result of the studio's greed, and you can't really control other people. Like I remember going to see It, and there was these two kids behind me that were maybe a third of my age, and they're sitting here yakking away about the movie. I'm like, you're wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. And it's like, I'm about 2 seconds away from turning around and going, you know what? If I wanted the audio commentary, I'd have waited for the DVD. But luckily somebody else said, shut up. And it was just like, I get it. It's like, it's one of those things. But like, speaking of families though, it may be more economical for a family of four to stay at home to watch Mulan for $30. But if somebody's a single adult or a couple, it's not as economical.
Exactly.
And going to the theater is one of the few things, and especially America, that's affordable. I mean, you can't go to a ball game, you can't go to a concert, you can't go to a lot of things anymore without forking out hundreds of dollars. Even going to like Disney World, we were talking about, like Rob, we were talking about on the show the other day, like, it costs you a couple $100 just to get in the door. Going to the movies is a very affordable thing to do. And one thing I was wrong about was I thought that the smaller cinemas, the independent chains, would be the ones to be hurt. And I brought this up a few times, but they're the ones who are actually doing okay because they aren't being shut down by a big corporation right now. If they're allowed to be open in their area, they're open, and they're showing all these classic films. They're showing Bill and Ted. They're showing, Tenet. They're showing all these new movies. And the drive-in in my town is open for the first time in 5 years. And I know many towns the same thing. So, yeah. And Rob, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything before you had to go, but that's basically my feelings on it. Is like, I just don't feel like we're at a place yet where they can afford to lose the theaters.
No. And well, the theaters make most of their money on concessions anyway. I mean, so, but but like I said, there's going to be people like me who aren't going to miss the theater experience just because it's just degraded over the years. But, there are still sometimes that I will be willing to go to a theater. But anyway, that's what I got to jump, guys. I got a couple things to do. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for dropping by.
All right. No problem.
And before we move on, we're going to run through a few
See you later.
of super chats. Yeah. Take care, Rob.
Take care.
Yeah. And we'll run through some super chats and then I have some thoughts on the matter myself. Mr. Tickle Trunk sent $2 saying this is for William Jones, so thank you both. And Michael MacLeod sent us $5 asking, any chance we see Disney broken up? because of Coof. You know what?
Mm,
There's a chance. Absolutely, there's a chance that Disney will have to divest part of their business in order to salvage the company.
I
Do
see
not
Apple
be
doing
surprised
a
if they.
takeover before that happens, though.
I think that they might start selling off assets. I
agree.
like it broken up. I don't see them, but broken up or selling off assets. I
But
see
who's
that's
going to
very
buy it,
likely.
though? That's the problem.
Oh,
And one
no,
of the,
that's no problem at all. Comcast.
Yeah,
Disney
there are
has
definitely-
a shit ton of assets that Comcast really wants, and Comcast are in nowhere near the same position as Disney are. Like, for instance, they want like the Sky things and the thing that they were competing with Disney for. They may get them in the end.
a few
Yeah,
things I can understand, but I don't know about. They ain't going to sell Star Wars. They ain't going to sell Marvel. They ain't going to sell.
I did say that. I did say that.
No, I know.
Disney is bigger than Star Wars and Pixar.
No, I know, but those are the main things that they're never going to part with, and anything else they would part with, nobody really wants or would buy.
Loads
Outside of maybe a few of the things like you're talking about with Comcast, but that's like, yeah, they want some technical things. They're not necessarily going
that's
after.
part of, that's part of Disney. That's part of Disney, and that's part of breaking Disney up.
Honestly, I think you're right in some way. I think you're both right. I think Tom's right. They're not going to sell those three core things, but I can see them unloading ABC. I can see them giving it to a Comcast. I can see them divesting themselves of a lot of the investment they made in 20th Century Fox. They have a lot of overhead with, I've been down to the lot there. There's the Newman stage where you can record all these things they're not using because they are doubling the property they already have. They already have a recording stage. They don't need this other stage. They don't need this other lot. Also, they own ESPN. They have their fingers in, the Discover network and all these different
Sky in
assets.
Europe. That's
yeah,
also
exactly,
and
they don't need them. Yeah, they're going to have to divest of those to stay in their core business. And let's face it, their original core business, their bread and butter is live. It's their theme parks. It's the predicated on the idea that large gatherings of people can pay a lot of money to go experience Disney. That core business has disappeared. So the deep pockets that Disney had even 9 months ago have disappeared. So I think that Disney would be very smart to go, okay, given we have to be agile, most people are going to streaming. We have a couple of intellectual properties that are valuable. What can we get rid of that we own to stay in business, to keep the lights on? Because they're already letting, I think it was 26,000 employees go out of
28.
And that's such a freaking tragedy that words cannot express it. But that's completely different, because that's how America ends. But not just because of that, but because of the same thing that caused it. Like the full impact of that. No one understands yet, unless you're an economist, just how freaking bad it is. And someone needs to be, there really needs to be a reckoning for it. And it needs to be a reckoning for those that demanded the lockdown, which is completely unscientific and inexcusable. And it's going to cost 10 times as many deaths from ruined lives than the Coof ever could. But I'm not going to go on a rant about that.
No, I agree, and I think it's going to affect entertainment. The lockdown affect not only the people that do it,
but it goes so beyond entertainment. It's the end of the Western civilization, almost. So
But I must say this: I'd love your thoughts as well. I think part of we're talking about Disney being in trouble. I think we're in the middle of a streaming service war, and I think to the point of the going to the movies experience, I'd love to know your thoughts as well. But I think that the studios are kind of looking to get the most people on their own service, and so any movie they could lock down, that they could have, is a great way to tempt people to their service, keep them there, and have them, pay a little bit more for a premium fee, so that it's in their interest to not have a lot of releases go out and have to share profits with the theater company, because if the studio is the means by which you are distributing the film, they keep all the profits. They go direct to the consumer and cut out the middleman, which is the movie theater. And that is something else working against movie theater companies.
Yeah, but the problem with that is, like I was saying, is you got Mulan, which was a prime example of they couldn't even make it work that way they wanted to, because that was their whole plan, was to keep it exclusive on Disney Plus, get the extra money up front that they would have gotten theaters from those who would be desperate enough to watch it 3 months early. And that proved to be a failure, to where they had to put it out on all the other services. And that's the thing, is there's not enough people, and the streaming war is something that we predicted a long time ago, but something we didn't predict was this going on in the middle of that. So like it's a because like Disney, where it was positioned when they decided to buy Fox, when they were setting up Disney Plus, all before the coup, like it made sense for them. But now they're in this position where they've got 2 studios, no money coming in, like you guys were saying, a bunch of redundant facilities. They just laid off all these people. The problem with movies being released is they keep pushing everything back because they can't get anything started. And that's where, you know, I brought this story to Andre's attention, and we're not going to get too deep into it, but that's the whole thing is, you know, until they can get things started, that's going to be the big problem. Every time they start something, everybody starts getting sick. They just shut down, what was the movie I just told you?
Jurassic World.
So here's another one that got shut down. And again, every time one of these movies gets shut down, that means everything's going to keep getting pushed back more and more. But there's going to reach a breaking point where they're eventually just going to have to release things so the investors can try and see some kind of return on some of these things. That was kind of where Bill and Ted had no choice. They had to release. And the thing with like the Pixar film, that's a little bit lower level film. An animated film does better in streaming. Trolls did pretty well in streaming because of the whole family film aspect of it. But they've also killed their secondary market. And that's the problem you have there is, yeah, you can do the whole direct to market thing with the consumer, but at what cost?
No, I agree with you. I don't disagree. I think Mulan is here's an interesting parallel. Mulan was the wrong film. What if Mulan had been a good movie? Imagine direct profits going to Disney if it had been an out of the gate 350 million to 400 million direct premium VOD profit. The 30% wouldn't have gone to theaters. There wouldn't have been a middleman in any of it. And that could have been a huge, huge win. It was simply the wrong film. You know, it wasn't that great. It didn't receive the notices it had, just as Tenet was not the right movie to bring people back to the movie theater. Tenet received a mixed reception.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and you're right. But we have some proof now to see how well one of these movies can do between Trolls and Bill and Ted, and it's not enough. It's just
I agree with you. I'm
not
just
yet anyway. Yeah, like even if you
quality,
had one that is a hit, because Bill and Ted, like I said, was #1 for 3 weeks in a row, plus the trilogy was bouncing around in the top 5 on all of the different services between Amazon, iTunes, all of them. And through all that, now that the dust is kind of settled on that, they're saying it's roughly made about $35 to $40 million in the US, which is a big win for them. But now put that up against something that would have cost $100 million. They just lost $60 million and then some because of the, advertising costs and all the other stuff, to where Bill and Ted's already in the black, and they're just opening up in other countries now in theaters in the UK and other areas. So there's still some more money to come in certain ways, but they pre-sold a lot of their foreign stuff, but that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Well, but my point is even if the movie's good, going back to what Rob said, is I don't know if we have the infrastructure yet in America, at least, especially to support a big ass movie like that, and them actually making a profit without a secondary market.
Hold that thought, because I have a question to that end. But first, I want to get through some more super chats. Mr. Tickle Trunk sent us $5 Canadian saying, proof of the great Konkle's idea that drive-ins are booming right now in a lot of places after decades of them falling away. Social animals. And then David Lutz.
Very true.
sent
Look at
us,
The Empire Strikes Back. The Empire
Exactly.
Strikes Back is making money because it's a good movie, and people are willing to go to the drive-in to even see a movie they've seen 100 times to get out of the house, to have a communal experience, or to show their children for the first time. I think, it's very complicated. You both raised great points. Yes, it has to be the right movie. It has to be a good movie. Also, you have to acknowledge the communal experience of watching, but we are having someone actively fight against the idea of the movie theater system, because now the people that are producing the films, who are putting up the money, want to be the means of distribution. And that will dictate the genres and the scale of the films that we'll watch in the future. Because you're right, Bill and Ted film, it was scaled to an audience size that it is a niche film. I am suggesting that going to the movie theater will also become a niche market.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is we won't know until we get there. But like, that's the point I'm trying to get to too, is like, how are we going to be able to see a movie like the Avengers without the theaters? I don't know. That's why they keep pushing back Wonder Woman. That's why they keep pushing back Dune and Black Widow and all that stuff, because they know they can't yet. And that's where Tenet was kind of the testing ground. But I think you're right, though, too, to where Tenet may not have been the right movie to really, as far as a new movie, to test this whole thing of, can you get a crowd to go out and actually see a movie in the size you need? I don't know what movie that would be. I think it would probably be Wonder Woman at this point, but even that's a toss-up, because there's a lot of, I don't know.
I'm glad that they used Tenet as that canary in the coal mine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, imagine if they had used Dune, they would have killed the franchise there. I mean, because like Tenet is an original movie. I mean, if that fails, then you can always blame the thing. There's no doubt what it was, and it's not going to be any long-term repercussions because it was an original one-off. You don't derail a franchise or anything. So actually, I think it was the perfect movie to use as a canary in the coal mine. That's like the one thing that it did. Showed the rest of the industry, let's wait a little bit. Of course, I have a question on that, but let me get through one or two more super chats first. David Lutz sent us $5 saying, Elon Musk is making Starlink, high-speed internet everywhere. Be here in 18 months. Love the show. Thank you. And that ties right in with Rob Altis' $5 super chat saying, while visiting Taiwan, I saw how far behind we are in terms of internet gas. On a funny note, when I was in LA 2 years ago, I also saw how far behind you are in terms of internet gas. But that's neither here nor there. And Mr. Tickletrunk sent us $5 Canadian saying, my parents took turns so they could see movies with friends instead of with each other. The men saw a movie while the wives babysat, then swapped. You know what? That's what me and my wife did when our youngest prevented us from going to the theaters. Right. We just didn't go together. We went separately while one was so much a kid. That's how you do it.
I did the same thing. That's what you do. It's called social mores. It's called knowing how to act in a public social setting.
Yeah, but I think that that actually has devolved. I don't think that we're evolved enough. I think I'll raise you that we've actually devolved because of social media, and social media and the news have conspired to make people a bunch of narcissists.
Yes, I agree with you. And technology's enabled them. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Everyone thinks they're so bloody special snowflakes, and everyone are so important that they have to say what they think at any moment, even though it's just uninformed opinionating. But that's what makes them so special. Yeah, blah. Yeah. Anyway, and then we're caught up. Matt G sent us $5 saying, the special/Fathom event saved my theater experience. Riff tracks, concert films, documentaries, sports, retro films. My theater attendance went up 300%. See, there's a way. But
here's my refresh. Question. I think we had a few more, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but I'll deal with them in a couple of minutes. But right now, I have a question for you guys, Konkle in particular, because right now, we've had all of these amazing announcements. Right now, we've gotten Doctor Strange and Spider-Man. The Flash will bring back both Batman and Michael Keaton as Batman. And following Justice League, Ben Affleck may still do his Batman thing for HBO Max, whereas J.J. Abrams has Justice League Dark planned and maybe even a new Constantine spin-off and all that. Will any of these things happen? Is this even sustainable, for instance, to make a Flash movie with all of these people, or continue the MCU? Like, who knows how long this situation is going to last? Like, at what point are these movies going to fail if movies don't come back?
Do you want me to take it first?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we have to really take a look at how we define what is a success for the film and what is a return on the investment. Because the theater experience has been put on pause and possibly will not return in the same way. I think the idea that a movie must open huge, in the first week or two, it needs to make back the vast majority of its budget, that needs to fall away. I'm not saying you can't have an event picture, you can't have a great popular entertainment that you spend some money on casting, as you say, bringing in characters, bringing in actors that bring back the nostalgia factor or were beloved. But now that you're in a streaming model and we're going to be in that model, you can have it sit on the shelf and have people, quote unquote, buying a ticket to the movie for a year. They can buy it for 2 years. It can sit on the shelf and be more popular in its second year than it was in its first. And this is borne out right now by the idea of, look at some of the movies that have risen to the top on Netflix. There'll be I think Escape Plan for a little while was number 5 or 6 on Netflix. This little film with Stallone and Schwarzenegger, people rediscover and they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to watch that. I think the idea that you're going to have a film made or break its budget in that first week as it would have in a movie theater opening is going to fall away, and you're going to look at what's called the long tail. And in business, that simply means that it can sit on the digital shelf and be rediscovered. You can sell that ticket for a lot longer digitally than you could in person. But the question is, do they need to recoup their money that quickly, or will they start thinking long term? Like, will you have a company stop being 4 months from closing closing it down and not being able to keep the lights on? Are you going to start thinking about films in terms of assets, the people that make those films as assets, and that over the long haul, those movies will make their money back, but it won't be the kind of quick infusion of cash that they've been counting on?
I think that for that to happen, budget have to come down loads, because the reason why they have to earn so much is when they get these massive loans, because it's basically lent money. It's not the studio's own money. They get it from some billionaire tycoon in Texas, or from a bank, usually a bank or a hedge fund company or something like that, and they're going to want payments with interest, and they have a planned repayment plan, and for that to happen, that kind of assumes that a lot of money is going to come in really freaking fast. Yeah. That model is not going to work in a world where audiences no longer go to theaters the way that they did. But I think that we could see a return of the mid-budget movie now. That's similar to what Gary J. Tunnicliffe told us on Wednesday. But he said, the best thing right now is to make a movie for a few $1 million, up to 10, 30 million. That's something that, as you say, they actually can have a longer repayment period for. Of course, I don't even know if that is enough to make money in streaming. That budgets have to come down even further. But maybe that wouldn't be such a bad thing.
Well, it might not.
Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, I think it might not be a problem because, there's a sliding scale. When a movie first opens, the vast majority of the money goes back to the studio and the theater company takes a chunk. They take maybe 10%. And the longer the theater has the movie, the higher percentage. I think they could get to 30 or whatever percentage eventually of the profits. With streaming, the studio itself is keeping 100% of the profits, but over a longer period of time, they're getting paid back because this middleman of the movie theater has been cut out. So they're going to have to pick their battles. I think you're absolutely right. For someone like me, I'm excited that there might be a return of a mid-level movie, one that you don't have to swing for the fence and make $100 million the first 2 days, or it's considered a failure. By the same token, one of the reasons we have these big spectacles, some of which are good, some of which are terrible, is because they've been predicated on that big theatrical release. And let's face it, international used to mean nothing, and now the vast majority of money is made up through international markets. All of this is changing into a permanent transition, and I think after the world returns, the business model is already in place that people are conditioned for the ease of buying a movie from home and watching it, and they need a compelling reason to go to the theater. Either the movie theater is going to have hopefully better films in a mid-range and also event films that maybe have a premium ticket price, but perhaps we can bring down the ticket price of a mid-level film and have it stay in the theater longer. The question is, will the movie theater still be there at the end of 2021 to have a big opening? Will you be able to open it in 5,000 theaters? Will the lights still be on? That's still very much in question because theater, I hope, doesn't just primarily become for cinephiles, or teens that want to get out of the house for a date and everyone else stays home.
Yeah. What was the original question, though, Andre? Again?
Yeah, no, it was basically we don't know how long this situation is gonna be drawn out, and we don't know if audiences are ever gonna go to theaters again the way that they were up till this point. I mean, I think there's a very real scenario that we may never again have a $1 billion movie. In such a situation, will we even get movies like The Flash featuring both Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck as Batman,
right,
or the next round of Avengers movies? Will we even get them when the market for getting $1 billion in theaters just isn't there? If it isn't, I think it might not be.
Here's the thing, and I mean, Tom brought up obviously a lot of interesting points, and so did Gary the other day too, and I think the thing is, we'll have to go back. I think, yes, we will, but it'll be in a limited situation. I think mainly the point you have to look at is compared to back in the 70s and 80s, where you would get, maybe 100, 200 movies a year at most. I mean, we're getting, hundreds of movies a year now. It's like quadrupled in the number, even though Hollywood's cut back a little bit in the last few years. I think they're going to have to cut back even more. Instead of having one big movie a month or two big movies a month in the case of Disney, they're really going to have to cut back to that one or two big movies a year. And those movies are going to have to be the big ones they bank on, like as far as an Avengers event or a Flash movie like you're talking about, the Flashpoint movie. Like something that really, really is going to drive the audience. Now, I think once everything goes away, people are going to really want to get out. I don't feel like movie theaters, as long as they're still around, that's the thing. And I mean, I feel like a lot of the whole Regal closing things down and the big corporation theaters acting the way they are is, I think they're really just fishing for some government assistance, because a lot of them could have been open in certain areas, no problem. That's what I heard from a lot of people complaining, is they're acting like there's nothing open in their area. It's like because they're stuck in an area where all they have is, AMC's or Regal cinemas. And it's like, well, yeah, because they're not open on a global level pretty much. And it's like, you got to go to smaller towns where they've got local cinemas that are open. Like around me, there's 4 or 5 choices where I can go to tonight to go see a movie. But I know in certain areas there's not.
Around me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
see, like where
everything
you're
closed
at.
around me. I couldn't see Tenet. There's no theater to go to see it. And of course, I think you're right. The question is, what's going to keep the theater open between these big event type movies,
Yeah.
and they're taking a percentage. It's really a strange business model because the people providing the theater with the thing that makes them money don't want to provide it to the theater because they can keep more profits if they do it directly. But the idea of making your money back still seems to make the most sense by going to the movies and seeing it in a movie theater. That's where the big, as Andre is saying, the $1 billion movie, we don't want it to disappear, or certainly they wouldn't want it to disappear. But you can't just build a business on, okay, let's make a movie. Now, if it makes $1 billion, we stay in business.
Mm-hmm. No, that's going to have to go away. And that's what I was getting to, is it's going to have to go back to similarly to the old model in a lot of ways, in where they have less big movies as far as event movies, and they have smaller movies throughout the year. And a lot more is going to happen with streaming now, as opposed to, them going to theaters. So it'll be a change. What's going to happen is we'll eventually get a movie that does, but it might take a few years. I don't think it's going to be like the next Avatar or something like that. It's going to be something.
No, certainly not that.
No, it's going to be something that we may not even expect to do it. It'll come out of nowhere. It'll surprise us. It's going to be whatever the next Avengers level thing is. But we know at this point, comic book movies are pretty much at they're on the down. They can't go any bigger than they have. They've maxed out. I really don't see them going any higher than there. They're on the downward slope now. It'll be whatever the next big thing is. And it could be 5, 10, 15 years down the road. But I think with what's happened in the last few months, what they've learned is they can re-release these old movies and make money. So I think we'll see a lot of the old style releasing schedules, to where you'll see 1 or 2 new movies a month, and then they'll re-release a couple movies a month. The summertime, they'll do like a big movie. Christmas time, they'll do a big movie. But other than that, the rest of the year will be full of smaller movies. And it may be a new rise of independence. Because like, you're saying, is they have to be able to figure out where the money's coming from. And that's the way old independent movies used to run. A great interview we did with Robert Shea, because that's how he used to pre-sell all his movies. So they were pretty much in the black before the movie even came out. It was just a matter of getting the thing done and getting it out. And then the investors got their money back. Everything was fine and dandy. Everything on top of that was gravy. And that's kind of the system they're going to have to go back to. And that's how Bill and Ted managed to make their money back. MGM, even though they've been losing a lot of money with their remakes, they've been pre-selling a lot of them overseas, which is something you brought up too, is a lot of the studios haven't been doing because they've been relying so much on the overseas dollar. That's one thing Hollywood needs to quit doing, is concentrating on that. And then people are bringing up the shit in the chat about the woke crap. That's not going away anytime soon. In fact, every time I turn around, another company or whatever is adopting these draconian rules that the Oscars brought up, basically. So it's going to be the independents is where you're going to probably get a lot more of your not woke entertainment. Tom can probably speak to that a little bit too.
Well, I think that's true. I think in the most ironic turn, the most diverse ideas of thought, where there isn't wokeness, which has now become the norm, will be in the independent realm, where you can have different people's thoughts on hiring and what stories they do and what. Maybe they don't want to do a woke film, and it'll have to be a grassroots film that actually reaches out and the audience responds to that. And then Hollywood will go, wait a minute, people want that kind of movie. And then all of a sudden it'll repivot in that direction. It struck me the way you just described movie theater experience is exactly how it was before Jaws. You had a couple of big films come out, and then movie theaters would run re-releases. I remember as a child, you could go see Old Yeller, which was made in the 1960s. It would still be playing in a theater in the 1970s because they just have a second run in your movie theater until the next big movie came along. The only difference in that paradigm is now you can get cinema quality experience of all these old titles in your living room.
Right.
So movie theaters need to figure out the revival theater method. You have to figure out, how do you get people to come to the movie theater for mid-level films? They need to be fresh because they can get all of the classics on Blu-ray or streaming or whatever now. So it's all up in the air as far as how are you going to keep the movie theaters open long enough and stay sustained so that you can have event pictures, but with only event pictures, you can't keep the movie theaters open. So we have to find new ways to deliver entertainment to the theater, but also acknowledge that people are now used to buying and consuming and watching their stories at home a lot, and that's not going away. So it's an opportunity, but it's also a bit of confusion.
Yeah, right on cue with that. Our good friend Gary J. Tunnicliffe, who I believe must be watching because he sent this to me. So hey, Gary, he sent me a screenshot from CNBC from back in April, end of April, where the headline is Trolls World Tour made more for Universal in 3 weeks on demand than Trolls did in 5 months in theaters.
That's true.
So yeah, streaming isn't going anywhere.
Yeah,
And with
but my
that,
question was, though, after that, though, is did they sell as many videos? I don't think
that,
they did.
I very much doubt it.
Because,
But
like
I
I
have,
pointed, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, I have some super chats that we need to get through also. Larry sent us a thumbs up for $1.99, so thank you. Whereas Kip Ellis sent £1.49 unicorn, so thanks so much for that. And Tiberius Monk 84 sent us $5 saying, I'm deeply bothered by Chris Nolan's decision to put his vanity and profits above the lives of others with the release of Tenet. Horrible decision. Yeah, but it's not just his decision, because that would have been a Warner decision on behalf of the industry testing the waters. It's not just him. So there's plenty of blame to go around for that. As I say, that was the industry sending a canary in the coal mine. Is that a fair assessment, Konkle?
I believe it is. I think you're right. I think had the canary perhaps been even more well received or populist, it certainly may have affected the experiment. But you're right. It was the canary in the coal mine. I'll bet the conversations between Nolan and Warner Brothers were very stressed. I don't think it was Nolan simply insisting when it had to be out. I think Warner Brothers said, look, you're Christopher Nolan, your movies make money. Let's put this out and prove that people in America will come to the cinema and watch your movie. And that didn't bear out because America has been driven into a kind of media frenzy of fear. And so people that maybe would have gone to see the film, or someone like myself who I would have gone to see the film if they had opened the movie theaters for me to see the film. The same thing happened in New York. So it is a self-fulfilling prophecy that it only made 23 million at the box office because people were made to be fearful to go. The movie received some mixed reception, and then in the major markets where you make your money, like New York or Los Angeles, you could not see the movie. So it was the canary, but also the coal mine was working very hard against the canary before it even
it was
went.
kind of rigged. And the other point I bring up is I think there is a desire to go. Otherwise, movies like Empire Strikes Back and Goonies and all these other ones that have taken the top spots over other movies that were out there shows that people just want to see good movies. Like they have these movies at home sitting on their shelves, but yet they'll still go
watch
see
it communally.
They still want to go see them in the theater in a drive-in. So like I think there is still that desire there. Now, I don't know if it'll go up ever to the place it was, but another point that Master Jedi Dude brought up here about Trolls was something that I was trying to say too, was, people had a ton of kids at home. It was during the beginning of the shutdown, and if it was a trend, then Mulan would have done much better. I think that's the point I was trying to make, is like the trend there was like, since Trolls, there hasn't been anything in streaming that has been a huge hit. Bill and Ted did well, but that was just because, like, the point we keep making is that the movie only cost $20 million to make. That's the difference. Mulan, on the other hand, cost $300 million to make, roughly. And that's with a good guesstimate, because they're saying what, 250 million, I think they said. Yeah. But we know they've done reshoots, and then you add in advertising and all the other business. There's no way they spent less than 300 million. And that's the other problem. And the other side of it is, sure, Trolls made $200 million in 3 weeks, but I have not seen one copy of it move on my Walmart shelf because I've made a point to look, and I have not noticed.
No, I agree with you. And I do have to point out, if parents wanted to show Mulan to their kids, they already owned it. They own the animated version. You can watch it anytime. So, Mulan was revisiting a property that if you had any interest in it or wanted to show your kids, you could have bought it even before the live action one came out. So it had several things working against it. It had a mediocre reception. You could already own Mulan. There wasn't a compelling reason to have it, but you're right. If it was a trend, yes, it would have been more successful, on premium VOD. And I'll be curious, what ultimately the numbers are on it, how it did, because I think also the controversy in China and it being Chinese themed, and where some of the problems they had with bad publicity in China, hoping to get money there, all worked as a perfect storm against it.
They need to drop something like Wonder Woman or something like that for me to see some real numbers.
Yeah, I think you're right, and we're yet to know. And Gary was right to point it out. And I real quick want to shout out to Gary. I don't know if he'll remember this, but I voiced a commercial as an old British lady for your Pumpkinhead creation that you had that you guys were puppeting. So I actually got to work with him on something. He's a terrific guy, and it just proves what a small world Hollywood is, that he's a part of Midnight Edge here, and it's someone that I've worked with before.
Gary has his finger in every single pie.
Everything. Yeah, I remember I did the commercial with him, and I saw him on your show, and I was like, wait a minute, I've worked with Gary.
Like, if there's been a movie from 1990 on that's had any special effects in it whatsoever, like, Gary's probably worked on it.
Yeah, I recognized it right away. The commercial, they had me do this sort of old lady voice, talking, but they had Pumpkinhead talking, eating cereal. So it's like, oh, Nina down the ways there, and Gary's like puppeting this giant alien eating breakfast cereal to it, and that's the way that I met him, which was wonderful. But just what a small world. And he does raise a great point with the Trolls experiment working. I just don't think either of those things are a bellwether of what the business is going to be like. And as somebody that loves making genre films, and my whole production business was based on doing affordably or smart budgeting on a genre film idea, there's an opportunity there to create a middle ground film where if I can turn around and tell someone, look, for $25 million, I can do my Islands in the Stars film. It will have a decent cast. It'll be a good story. Well, then rolling that out on digital platforms and streaming and transactional video, that will make perfect sense. You'll be able to make your money back. The studio and the investors will get the 100% without a middleman. That all makes sense. But I love the idea of it. Originally was predicated on a theatrical release, because I remember sitting in the theater. Well, the first time I watched a movie that I had made, it was like I was watching a different movie sitting in the theater. It was like a dream, and watching it on a big screen with people. Even I, who lived with it for a year in post-production, enjoyed it on a new level and with new eyes, because I was seeing it in a movie theater with people. There is no experience like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And we have a couple of more super chats to get through. The next one we got is from sorry about that. Yes, referring to one of your earlier comments, Mr. Tickle Trunk sent us $5 saying, what Mr. Konkle said depends on how much a movie is to watch on release, how much it costs after a year, and if people mostly to buy on discount. And also, I got a message from Gary right now. Thanks for the shout out. Hi, Tom. We're trying to make sense of a constantly changing model in a scenario no one could have foreseen. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, if they could drop, like, here's the problem is I know a lot of these movies, they can't just drop them on streaming, and this is something I've also explained, because there's a lot of different licensing and other thing that's involved in it, to where, for instance, Doritos has a deal with Wonder Woman. They've already been on the packaging. Like, they were expecting that movie to be in theaters in May. Like, I mean, there's a lot of things that are involved in these that they can't just turn around and drop something on streaming like a lot of people think they can. But it would be interesting to see if they were to turn around Universal and Blumhouse for, like, fuck it, we're going to drop Halloween 2 right now, of the trilogy, because they filmed 2 and 3 are done. They're done.
Mm-hmm.
They just hold them off because they can't put them in theaters. The second one was supposed to be out this year, got pushed to next year, and then the third one was supposed to come out the following year. Well, they could drop the second one right now. Be a perfect time for it. And I think that'd be a good gauge of this thing. Same thing, like I said, with Wonder Woman or any of these. Black Widow, I don't know if that would necessarily be a good gauge. But I want to see how one of these bigger movies play on a streaming service to see if they actually can make the money. Because even Robert Meyer Burnett's made the point, like, the biggest fight in pay-per-view history at I can't remember how much it was a crack, but it was like, what, $60-70 a crack or whatever. It still only made like $100-some million. So, like, I mean, I still want to see where Trolls made $200 million. I know they say that's how much it made, but I don't know anybody who saw it. I mean, I know a lot of people with kids probably have, but I don't know. I really want to see one of these big movies and how they play out, because I just don't know if enough people trust streaming yet. I know a lot of people who are very reluctant to even get involved with, like, downloading movie or like paying for a movie that they can't download. You know what I mean?
Well, I agree with you. As much as Hollywood wants to thrust wokeness and social justice down our throat, they are going to thrust their own streaming services down our throat, because it is in their interest to lock down the films for exclusivity on their system, on their delivery system, which is a monopoly, and go direct to the consumer. So it's going to be an interesting struggle between the movie experience that we can have and the people that make movies wanting to maintain complete profit control.
I miss the days of DVD and Blu-ray when you owned the thing yourself already. But
I love that. I have hundreds of movies that way. I always make the analogy, I think I have before. It's as if someone could come by your library and say, nope, you can't have that book anymore. And they take it off the shelf and it disappears. That's streaming. With licensing can go away. And you can say, hey, kids, I want to show you a movie. And you go to your bookshelf or your movie shelf and the movie's gone. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about it.
And just to show the hubris and confidence they have in this shit, Bob Iger came flat out and said, yeah, we fucking lied to you. The movie, not all the movies are there, not all the shows are there, and they're not always going to stay there. Sorry, we lied to you, but tough shit.
If you don't own the Blu-ray or the DVD of Cocoon, good luck, Oscar-nominated film. Good luck finding it. It's not on a single streaming service.
I don't even know if it's
anywhere.
on Blu-ray in the US. I had to import that on Blu-ray, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you're right. And that's the problem with streaming, is that it's at the mercy of licensing. You don't have the extras, and ultimately the you buying it, as you say, you can buy it and it can still be taken away from you.
I'm very happy that I got all of the Walt Disney Treasures metal tin box sets when they came in the early 2000s, so that I have everything that matters of the Disney library that they won't put on the Disney Plus streaming service. So yeah, as we've always said, preserve your physical media, because with streaming, you only have it on their good grace. And with that, let's move on to a couple of more super chats. From Pillar to Post, sent us $5 and said, one thing you haven't mentioned is the fact that people have been stuck at home for so long now that they might see theaters as an escape. I don't know. I think that people that want to go to the thing,
I think that's part of the reason.
Do it because they want to. Because, like, if you want to escape from home, you can go to the store. That's my thought, at least. But yeah.
No, but I do think that's part of the reason, because, like, there's a lot of people where they just want to get the fuck out, of the house. We've been stuck in the house for so long. We're creatures of getting out of the house. Most of us are. It's not a normal thing. Things are so abnormal. I can understand the stress and the want and the need to just get back to normal, you know.
Yes and no. I want to agree with you, but having a son, I also know that instead of going out and just playing with his friends and doing something, he will sit in front of a TV and talk in a chat room and play a video game or play a computer game and not leave the house. So the question is, how conditioned is the next generation to simply take the lazier option and stay home? And how conditioned are they for the ease of buying a movie or playing a game and just watching it at home and doing like a watch party with friends, but never leaving the house? I mean, are we at some level, are we actually becoming like the people in Wall-E? You know?
I was just
might
thinking
be.
that. I was literally just thinking about Wall-E. I was going to say, like in Wall-E, you mean? So yeah, we are absolutely heading down that path. Stupider and more content. I mean, give the
Yes, and
populace
I hate
bread and circus. That's what we're getting.
Yeah.
Like that's what this is: bread and circus.
Yes, I agree with you, and it's very dangerous. I hate it. I hate the we are more connected and more alone at the same time than we've ever been, and I think it's not human to not be a social animal. Like Tom was saying, people want to get out of the house and do things, but we're teaching people. It's like the elephant. You know, the elephant when it's young is tied to a little stake in the ground. And it learns that if you pull on the stake, you can't go. When the elephant becomes huge and it weighs tons, the elephant will never pull on the stake, even though it could just walk away, because it's conditioned to know I can't go anywhere. So it never bothers to try.
Yeah, pretty much. And moving on with elephants or dinosaurs or what have you not, Vince Manor said for $5, theaters need to move to the Alamo Draft House model to survive. They should certainly move to their model for movie posters, I say. But yeah.
Well, not only that, I think like IMAXs have been up in attendance over the last few years. The premium movie experience has been up. It's the standard movie experience, as far as I understand it, has been down. But yeah, like Alamo Draft Houses and things like that have been doing very well in the past few years comparatively to the standard Cineplex.
Yes, because they're making an experience. Mr. Tickle Trunk just made a comment that was very prescient, which is, you know, people that are extroverted want to get out and do things, but you want to have an event, and Alamo does that really well. Also, I wish they'd simply, like our Cinerama Dome did it right, where they had someone from the theater actually monitor the audience. They would have ushers in the aisle. If someone was disruptive, they would talk to them or escort them out. Movie theaters need to get back to a more hands-on model where it is a social event to go to the theater. There should be a cafe to discuss the movie afterwards. You should know that if you have a problem with somebody in the theater, they're going to take care of it. They're going to ask them to leave. They're going to say, can you step out, or no talking, or I'm going to have to ask you to leave. They need to do that. They need to realize that the entirety, not just the movie, but the entire experience of going to a movie theater needs to become more polite. It needs to become more social. It needs to become more enjoyable if you really want people to come out and see a film. It's the whole experience, not just, oh, we've got great projection and then we'll turn on the projector and you'll never see us again.
Yeah. And moving on from that, Pseudo Sign sent us $10 saying, "Hey guys, loving Midnight's Edge content. Cynically, I'm concerned about the boom in novel-based movies and series because I suspect laziness by studios. I'm concerned about ruining good literature."
They've been lazy. They've been lazy. I mean, oh shit. The sad part is we live in an era now with the way things are that you can pretty much put anything that's on the page on the screen, and we have some of the most unimaginative, I don't want to use the word uncultured, but they almost are in a way. It's strange. Writers working in some of these films nowadays, as far as the up and comers, it's like they didn't take any writing classes at all or read any books about writing. It's the same people that come out and say, well, it's just a movie about space wizards with laser swords, so what difference does it make? It's like, no, there's rules, there's things that need to matter, and I think that's a big problem. I feel like if they could, because I've brought up, like, I would love to see like a full-fledged, mini series of Jaws that's just like the book, as long as it doesn't tread on the actual film. But I don't know if I trust anybody to do that.
Right.
Like, that's the thing.
You're having ideas generated by. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No. Anybody wants to jump in, because like I think that's the main problem. Is like, there's just no imagination anymore.
I think here's the thing: is a guy in the trenches with, I've got 10 original scripts, 10 original films. I have a team of people to do them, and I'm still, screaming against the wall and whistling in the apocalypse, because unlike, when Star Wars was created by a person who believed in it and needed to convince a company to give him money, now the companies that used to just need to be convinced by artists, they are creating the brief, creating the time slot, and saying, we just need to plug in something here. So you have the reason why you're finding it to be less of the norm, that it's an interesting property or original property, is it's not in a corporate interest. Corporate, they want to quantify art, and the danger of quantifying it is you tamp down anything high or low, and you just go in the middle. And the decisions and the creative are coming despite the system, not because of the system. You push something through, and if it's terrific and it's great, it got through despite everyone's effort to stop it. I think that there's an old Billy Wilder quote where he says, we were onto something really great, but then we caught it just in time, which is the way a studio might think about it, and make it mediocre, or decisions are just being made by people that aren't storytellers. And until that changes, and because of all this upheaval, maybe it's a chance for many people, I hope, to inspire, people that are just like me, that have stories they want to tell. They're passionate about cinema, and you want to do it, but you're banging on the same 4 corporate doors in order to do it. Maybe those corporate doors just need to be smashed down, because no one knows anything, and it's a Wild West show. And maybe what will emerge will be stronger and better for us, because we're the fans, we're the people that it should be for, and we shouldn't be just marketing people, like marketed to, or we're not marks, we're fans. And
Exactly.
And we felt for a long time that there's no dialogue with us. They're giving us what's supposed to be good for us, instead of just letting us decide and make the best films possible, and we'll vote with our pocketbook.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the thing, is there's a lot of people with great ideas out there. It's just the studio don't want to take a chance. I should reiterate, I guess, because I didn't want to make it sound like, there isn't ideas out there. There are, but it's like everything's gone backwards. Because back in the day, I mentioned Friday the 13th earlier. Well, that used to be like an embarrassment for Paramount, but they just kept making them and cranking them out because they made money. But back in the 80s and 70s, it was like, we're doing a sequel. They would almost hide it. They would love to hide the fact that it was a sequel. If they could call it anything but something 2, they would. Now it's become like, we got to make sure everybody knows it's connected with the MCU, or they're not going to go see it. It's become the crutch instead of the dirty, little like, we did a bunch of those just to make money so we could make these other great movies. It's just the opposite now. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's become television. It's expensive episodes of a long running television series. They just happen to be movies.
Yeah. And as for me, I'm going to just take it back to the original question, which was concerned about boom in novel-based movies and series. Honestly, I'm not worried about that at all. If you go back to the history of Hollywood, there's always been a boom in novel-based movies. If you go back to the very beginning of Hollywood, like all the classics that we still have today, they were nearly every last one based on books. And it has continued that way. There's always been movies based on books. There are movies that you don't even know that are based on books. Some of them are good, some are bad, most are somewhere in between. So if anything, many of the best stuff that we have gotten in the last few years has been based on books, including in TV series. I mean, we're getting Dune now, that's based on book. We're soon getting a Foundation that's based on book. But those are just like sci-fi stuff. There's so many other things. Like there's a series based on the Patricia Highsmith's Mr. Ripley books in the works. I'm looking forward to that. So I don't think that there's anything to be worried about, because books have always been fodder for movies. So I would not worry about that. And Mr. Tickle Trunk sent us $5 Canadian. The orthodoxy in Hollywood is so deep. I think the independent market will be the only way to save movies. It's already happening with comics. Yeah, that's true. I agree. Tom's, your thoughts on that? That the independent market will save movies unless Hollywood itself changes its orthodoxy?
I think
I'll say other time go first.
Yeah, real quick before we have a few more things to go through.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think if there's a space made for independent thought, independent orthodoxy, then yes, I think independent film and allowing us into the system is going to save us from the kind of ironic wokeness is less diverse. So I'm hoping that does happen, and it certainly could happen. If someone handed me the money to make one of my films now, I could be up and running in a couple of weeks and make an old school Hollywood style film. And that's because of technology and because of years and years of hard work that I've put into thinking about original ideas. So yes, hopefully that happens.
Yeah. And then moving on, next super chat is from Lars Hansen, good fellow Norse neighbor of mine, who sent 100 Danish krona asking, is it realistic to believe Apple could buy Fox from Disney? And as an economist, I just want to, well, yeah, fine. You guys go first, and I'll give the factual answer afterwards.
Well, I was going to say, I bet we'd see a hostile takeover of Apple taking over Disney and Fox before we see them just taking on Fox. That's my answer, I think.
Yeah. Konkle, your answer?
I don't think they'll get into the market of real estate like Fox. I don't think they need to take on the expenses of something like that. I think Apple has always been best when it was a technology company that went and licensed other content and intellectual property. I don't see them digging too deep. I may be wrong, but I don't see them getting into the old school studio business anytime soon.
Yeah. As for me, my thought is that it is unrealistic that Apple would buy Fox or the assets that Disney acquired from Fox specifically. That is unrealistic. I'm not going to say it's realistic, but it is not unrealistic that Apple could buy Disney wholesale.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, you're not wrong. The longer this goes on, the less and less unrealistic that option becomes.
Well, just for precedence, because Apple is one of the biggest owners of stock in Disney.
Yeah.
George Lucas is one of the secondary, and then I'm assuming it's whatever from there on out.
The widow of Steve Jobs, because there's always been ties between Apple and
right.
Disney.
So like all it needs is a few people to get together, and if Disney's looking in a place where they're about to make the worst decisions and whatever, blah 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 blah, that's where I see a corporate takeover before I see anybody like Apple buying anything out of them. I think it would be a very peaceful something that they would that the bosses of the companies would agree on, because they know each other, they're shareholders, they're buddies, they hang out together and everything. I don't think it would be a hostile. Right, it would be more of a corporate takeover than a hostile takeover.
Yes, it would be a corporate takeover. It would be that the bosses in Apple, they go to their friends and influencers within the board of Disney and give them an offer offer that they can't refuse, in much the same way that Disney gave the owners of Pixar an offer that they couldn't refuse, and Pixar started out as part of an Apple. So you see, like there, you have a connection the whole way. And Steve Jobs was the owner of Pixar, so he was like a big man on the Disney board, and his wife is still one of the biggest people in the Disney thing. So do not discount that option. That could happen, and it won't be hostile at all. It could be the salvation that Disney needs if this goes on for much longer, because Apple has much deeper pockets.
That's yeah.
And
and they make
Mr.
phones.
Yeah, that too. And Mr. Tickle Trunk sent us $5 saying, extroverts have been pulling out their hair. Some of us like watch parties, however. Others absolutely need to interact with people. Theaters ho. And here's one for you, Tom. The Shooter 1991 is back again, and he says, hey, very sorry about leaving. The Phantom, when it can go in production, will be the best horror film since Halloween 78. With a question mark,
Wow.
so I guess he's asking and not stating.
I would never presume to. I would simply be standing on the shoulders of someone like John Carpenter. I will do my absolute best if get an opportunity to make that film. Certainly, Halloween is the great grandfather of the independent horror slasher type film. It was beautifully made. I can only hope to learn from the master and hopefully make something like that. So I really appreciate your interest in it.
Yes, at least you didn't say The Exorcist, because everything is the most scariest film since The Exorcist anymore. I am sick of that in every freaking trailer.
Yeah.
The scariest film since The Exorcist. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And the final super chat before we round out for today, Sketch Therapy sent us $5 saying, watch Dolomite. It makes an important point about independent film in theaters, and it is a true story masterfully played by Eddie Murphy. Great movie. So yes, go watch Dolomite.
Very good movie.
With that, I would like to say thank you so much to Tom Konkle for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It was a great discussion with the both of you and Rob.
And and thanks to Rob for showing up today, and Tom, thanks to you, of course, for always being here, and thanks to Gary J. Tunnicliffe, who's also out there listening. It was so great to have you chime in by way of messages.
Who I think we have on next Friday, correct?
Yes, we do. We presumably have Gary J. Tunnicliffe coming back next Friday, and that won't be the last time either.
And
so
then Monday we're supposed to have Anna, that Star Wars girl. So looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
Oh, I like Anna. She's great. Yeah,
she's awesome. So we have much awesomeness coming for you. And on that note, I also would like to thank every single one that's been here watching us. We really enjoy having these things for you. So be sure to be back again on Monday for this show at 9 a.m. LA time. And we'll probably have more content for you before then, because we have some Star Trek to suffer through, don't we?
Don't remind me.
I feel the excitement, and there's much rejoicing. Yay!
Absolutely. So yeah. But with that, everyone, on behalf of us here at Midnight's Edge, I thank you all for joining us. Hit that like, be sure to subscribe, help share, and with that, I bid you all farewell.
Have a good one.
Thank you very